Okay, if you still have the chapter pages from the other day, I'm going to read the last few sentences that was on the page beforehand, okay? So it'll be the sentence at the bottom of page 82. Firedrake, cried Sorrel. Get up, Firedrake. We've had to find a place to hide. It's going to be as bright here as if we were inside a fairy hill. Beside her, Ben was looking around anxiously, so he's not happy about where he is. He's a bit worried. Only a stone's throw away, palm trees lined the banks of dried-up riverbed, their fronds rustling in the wind. So it's only a stone's throw away. That means it's very, very close. You think about how far you can throw a stone. That's how far away those trees are. Behind the palms rose sand dunes, and in the morning light the travellers saw fallen columns, ruined walls, and a large camp of tents. No doubt about it, there were people in those tents. Now, that's going to be a threat to them because the dragons just landed. And obviously, the one thing they've been told to avoid is going anywhere near people. So this could potentially prove to be a really massive problem. Quick, Firedrake, Sorrel urged the dragon as he got up wearily. Make for the palms over there. They ran across the sand, crossed the dry riverbed, and climbed behind the rocky slope of the bank where the palms grew. The trees stood close enough together to hide Firedrake from prying eyes for the time being, but the place wouldn't do as a hide for the whole day. So the idea of their prying eyes mean they've hidden somewhere where they can't be seen by people watching them. Maybe we can find somewhere in the hills, said Ben, a cave or a dark corner among the ruins. He took the rat's map out of his trouser pocket, but it was so wet that he couldn't unfold it. Bother, he muttered. We'll have to dry it in the sun, or it won't be any use. I don't know if you've ever come across wet paper, but if you try to unfold wet paper, it's going to tear really easily. So the best thing to do is to let that dry, otherwise that map is gone. What about those humans over there? Asked Sorrel. The place is swarming with them. She peered anxiously through the palm trees in the distant camp. They are humans, aren't they? I never saw so many humans living in canvas houses before. Now, canvas houses, they're living in tents made out of canvas, different material. With all those tents, I think it must be an archaeologist camp, said Ben. I saw a camp just like this once in a movie. Now, archaeologists, we know what archaeologists are, don't we? Because we just did this in our history lesson yesterday. What's an archaeologist, year 5? Good, it's someone that looks at history, looks at buildings and old ruins to put together and piece to piece together a story about a history. So, are archaeological what's-its? Asked Sorrel. Is that a particularly dangerous sort of human? Ben laughed. No, archaeologists are people who dig up old temples and vases and so on. What for? Asked Sorrel, wrinkling her nose. Those things must have got broken ages ago. Why bother to go digging them up? Ben shrugged his shoulders. Out of curiosity? To find out how people in the past lived, see? Oh, said Sorrel. And then what do? Do they repair the buildings and the vases and everything? No, Ben shook his head. Sometimes they stick the shards of pots back together, but mostly they leave things the way they find them. Baffled, the brownie girl looked at the broken columns. The sun was rising higher and the people in the camp seemed to be starting work. Firedrake brought Sorrel out of her thoughts and back down to earth. He yawned, stretched, and arched his back wearily. I'll just lie down under these funny-looking trees, he murmured drowsily. The rustling of their leaves is sure to tell me wonderful stories. He lay down sighing, but Sorrel hauled him back up again. So to haul him means to drag him back up, to pick him back up again. No, Firedrake, it's not safe here, she cried. I'm sure we can find somewhere better. Ben's right. It really doesn't look too bad up in the hills. We just have to find a place far enough away from the humans' camp. She was pushing the dragon further into the palms when Ben suddenly clutched her arm. Hey, wait, Sorrel! He pointed back to the beach. Look at that! They had left clear tracks in the damp sand behind them, leading across the dry riverbed and then up the slope. Oh, bother! How can I be so stupid? Said Sorrel crossly. She hastily climbed the trunk of the palm tree and pulled off a long frond. So a frond is going to be one of those big leaves, the big branches that come off them. I'll see to the tracks, she hissed down to Ben. You find a good hiding place for Firedrake and I'll catch up with you. Go on, get moving. So I wonder why you think it's important. If they see the tracks, they know that if the humans come around looking, they know that someone's going to be along there. And those footprints and tracks are not always going to match the humans. And it's going to lead them right to where Firedrake's hiding. So she's going to have to get rid of those tracks so no one is able to find them. So reluctantly, the dragon turned, while Sorrel jumped down into the riverbed and began sweeping the palm frond over the sand to cover their tracks. Come on, Ben said Firedrake. putting the backpacks over his shoulders. But the dragon did not move. "Shouldn't we wait for you, Sorrel?" he asked anxiously. "Suppose the humans turn up?" "Well, even if they do come this way, I'll hear them from a long way off. Go on, get out of here." Firedrake sighed. "Very well, but hurry up." "Brownie's honour," promised Sorrel. She looked around, pleased. The tracks on the slope and in the riverbed were already gone. "If you happen to pass any mushrooms, think of me." "We will," said Ben, and he followed the dragon. They found Firedrake a hiding place, a cavern among the rocky foothills, half hidden by tangled thorn bushes and at a safe distance from the human camp. There were carvings of ugly faces in the rocks around the entrance, and in one place the stone was covered in writing in a strange script. Now, we've looked at this before. Okay, we've looked at this in our history lessons for the Maya. You've also would have done this in the Egyptians. This is potentially the hieroglyphics writing that would have been carved into the temple walls. In fact, the place looked rather eerie, but the coarse prickly grass grew around it tall, and no path had been trodden through the thick undergrowth. To Ben's relief, it looked very much as if the archaeologists weren't interested in this cavern. "I'll go and see what's keeping Sorrel," he said, when Firedrake had made himself comfortable in the cool cave. "I'll leave the backpacks here." "See you later," murmured Firedrake, already half asleep. Ben unfolded the rat's map as well as he could, weighted it with small stones, and left it to dry in the sun. Then he ran back to join Sorrel as fast as possible. On the way, he obliterated Firedrake's tracks. His own human footprints weren't likely to arouse much suspicion, but where he could, he walked over the stones and remains of the walls that rose out of the sand anywhere. Now, obviously, his footprints aren't going to cause a problem because he's got human footprints and there's lots of humans around. But if they see dragon footprints or they see the brownie's footprints, they're going to get suspicious that something else is there. So he's got to hide those prints in the sand to make sure that nobody knows they're there. The sun wasn't very high yet, but it was extremely bright as it blazed down from the sky. Wet with perspiration is sweat, and breathless, Ben reached the dry riverbed. It was cooler here under the palms, and he looked around. Sorrel was nowhere to be seen. He raced down the slope across the riverbed and ran to the place on the beach where Firedrake had landed, but there was no sign of Sorrel there either, only the dragon's tracks. His huge paws had sunk deep into the sand, and the long mark left by his tail dragging behind him was clearly visible too. So why hadn't Sorrel finished getting rid of all of those tracks? Ben looked around anxiously. Where was Sorrel? The camp was swarming with people now. Vehicles were driving in and out, and there were men digging in the hot sand among the ruins. Ben went over to the spot where Firedrake's tracks appeared, as if out of nowhere. Sorrel had clearly only gotten this far. So Ben crouched down and looked at the sand. It was all churned up as if a great many feet had been scruffling on it, and he could hardly make out Sorrel's paw prints among the tracks of all the human boots that had trampled around on the sand. Okay, so now I'm thinking to myself, if he's now suddenly seeing their tracks from the morning completely covered in human tracks, maybe they've just been found. His heart thudding, Ben straightened up again. There'd been a vehicle standing not far off, and the prints of the boots led to it. But Sorrel's paw prints didn't show up anywhere again. "Oh, they took her with them," muttered Ben. "Those horrible people just took her away with them." The tyre tracks led straight to the camp, and Ben set off for it at a run. So the fact that Sorrel hadn't finished getting rid of the tracks, and suddenly all the human prints were around, and there's tracks leading to a vehicle, that suggests to him she's been captured. So he's now going to go and see if he can go and find her. Okay. So we're going to have a look at some different style questions for today. So we're going to focus this based on some of the pages that we did yesterday, okay? So let's have a look at this question. So then a strip of coastline suddenly emerged from the mist. Which word is the closest in meaning to emerged? And you need to tick one. So this question here is asking to identify synonyms. We're looking for another word that's going to mean the same as emerged. Now, we know that if something is going to emerge from the mist, that's something that it's doing, okay? That's a verb. Now, it's not going to be angered, because angered is going to be one of those words where that's a feeling, that's an emotion, okay? And here we're using it as a verb. Now, it could be something that appears out of nowhere. It could easily be something that just disappeared from the mist, Okay, so it just suddenly disappeared. Now we know it can't be something that's joined together, okay, because that doesn't symbolize, that could be what merge would be. So we could look at the word merge, and that's when you join something together, but it's emerge, so it's not going to be that one. So let's find that keyword in the text. It says suddenly emerged from the mist. Now I'm thinking, what is it that's then suddenly emerged? Well, we can see the coastline. Now beforehand, they said it was dark and they couldn't really see anything. And obviously they were flying around in this thunderstorm. And then it says, then a strip of coastline suddenly emerged from the mist. So it's not something that's disappearing into the mist. It's something that's coming from the mist. So that's going to tell us there the word we're looking for is going to be appeared. So to emerge means to appear. Now that's one of our vocab words we actually looked at in a previous reading lesson. So let's have a go at this one together. So with the last of his strength, the dragon steeled himself against the wind and slowly, very slowly, approached the safety of the shore. So we need to have a think about what the phrase steeled himself means in this sentence. Now this type of question gives you the phrase. What you're expected to do is to find another phrase that means the same, okay? So how would we write it differently but keeping the meaning the same? Now, it says here that he was either hard on himself, thinking about himself, mentally preparing himself, or moved against the wind. So looking for the keywords there of steeled himself. Now, I don't think it could be he was hard on himself or thinking about himself, because it says here he steeled himself against the wind. So it's something he's doing. So it's not going to be hard on himself. And I very high doubt he's going to be thinking about himself. But he could be mentally preparing himself, because don't forget, it says with the last of his strength. So he's pretty exhausted. He's been flying through this wind, but now he's got to go against the wind. So he's not really got a lot of this energy left. But it could be just another word for moved. So let's find it in the text. With the last of his strength, the dragon steeled himself against the wind. Okay, now it says here with the last of his strength. So although I know he's moving against the wind, he's got to find that energy from somewhere. Now, he doesn't necessarily have that energy from somewhere, so he might have to prepare himself mentally. So when you steel yourself, it means to mentally prepare yourself, okay? So the one that we're looking for there is mentally prepared, okay? Now, I want you to see if you can have a go at doing this one on your own. Now that I've sort of modelled two of them. So Ben and Sorrel undid their sodden straps and slid off. Now, I want you to see if you can tell me, what does sodden mean in this sentence, okay? So highlight the key words, see if you can find it in the text. Read around the pages where you've got the pages in front of you and think, well, what does sodden mean? Pause the video and have a go. Okay, so this question is giving you a word from the text. We've got the word sodden. What you need to do is you need to explain it in your own words. Now it says here, Ben and Sorrel undid their sodden straps. Now, I'm thinking they've just gone through the storm. They've been floating around near the seas. They've left the sea behind. They were in that massive storm and it was raining. It was wet. It was cold. So I'm thinking when something is sodden, okay, I'm looking for another word there from sodden or soaking. Now, when I know that something is soaking, I know that it's something that's very, very wet. So I then think to myself, well, what could sodden mean? Well, they've just come through this thunderstorm, so I'm telling me those straps have got to be pretty wet. I mean, they've also slid off his back as well. So fire drape must be very wet as well. So I'm going to go with explaining that it's very, very wet. So the straps were soaked through with water. Okay, so when something is sodden, okay, it means it's completely saturated, so completely filled or soaked all the way through of water. Okay, so well done if you were able to piece together some of that vocabulary to help you. So what I would like to do is you need to answer the vocabulary-based questions on pages 83 to 87, okay? Remember to highlight the keywords in your questions. I think a lot of you are not doing that when you've been sending it in to me, hence why a lot of you have been getting the work wrong. You need to highlight the keywords. Those keywords, when I write those questions, are from the text. You will find the answers, but also highlight the evidence in the text so that you know where to retrieve your information from, okay? So have a go at doing that, okay, and see how you get on with those questions. Take your time with it, okay, because there are a lot of pages for you to be able to get through. And then we will pick up a new objective with a new part of our next chapter where we'll find out if Sorrel is found safe and sound, okay? Good luck, Year 5.